Hi, everyone, and welcome to Middle Ground Book Fest. My name is Shannon Doleski, and I am so excited to talk about crushes with these wonderful authors today. We're going to go around and introduce ourselves. First, I said I'm Shannon Doleski, but I wrote Mary Underwater. It came out during the pandemic. And my next book is a post-apocalyptic kind of love story at the end of the world. And that comes out next spring. Chad, do you want to start?
Sure. My name's Chad Lucas. My debut novel, Thanks a Lot Universe, came out in May of this year. I live in Nova Scotia, Canada. I'm an author here. And Thanks a Lot Universe is about two boys, Brian and Ezra. Brian's going through a family crisis, dealing with a lot of anxiety. Ezra's his teammate on his basketball team, kind of notices Brian struggling, wants to help, but also isn't sure if he's ready to reveal that he has a crush on Brian. So the two of them sort of have to figure out life together from there.
Awesome. I've heard nothing but good things. Nicole, you want to tell us about your book that's coming out?
Hi. So my first one was Planet Earth is Blue, which came out in 2019. And my next one, which is more crush-centric, comes out next year. But unfortunately, the title's not finalized. So I have to just call it Untitled Middle Grade Book. But it's about a girl who is new to an area. She moved from Brooklyn, New York to Brooklyn, Connecticut, which is a small town. She's in foster care. And she is really determined not to make any personal connections with anybody, which all gets sort of thrown through a loop when she develops a crush on a girl in her class and a boy in her class at the same time.
Exciting. That's awesome. Niki?
Hi, I'm Niki Smith. My first middle grade book came out last January, I guess, called The Deep and Dark Blue, and my newest book comes out in October called The Golden Hour, and that's about a boy dealing with PTSD and anxiety through his love of photography and his friendship with a boy in his class who has just started hand-raising a newborn calf for the county fair.
Ooh, cool. And now, is this a graphic novel as well?
Yeah.
Awesome.
I write and draw most of my own books, yeah.
That's so cool. We're huge fans of your first book in our house.
Thank you.
James, what about you?
Hi, I'm James Bird. My debut came out with yours, Shannon, in a pandemic, and that was called The Brave. And there's a pretty big crush in that one. But my new book is called The Second Chance of Benjamin Waterfalls, and that comes out, I think, in January or April maybe. And there's a crush in that one where they start off kind of hating each other, but they develop through the pages feelings.
Very cool. Enemies to lovers is a huge trope that people love. Very cool. So we've already kind of touched on that, but let's go into further detail. Crushes in middle grade don't really have rules like some of the other age groups, which I think is wonderful for our readers. They kind of go from a crush, like a glance across the room, to like a full-on romance. So do you want to go into a little more detail about your crush in your books? I will go first. So in my debut, my characters are 14, and same with my follow-up as well. They're 14. So 14-year-olds are kind of all over the place as far as where they are romantically. And for my first, it's her first time holding hands. It's her first time having like a real crush and a real relationship. And my publisher let them kiss multiple times in it, which I was baffled by. And then my second book, very similar, like they're going through the like first relationship thing as a 14-year-old. But this time I wanted, my character, his name is Gabe, and he's 14. He's already had his first kiss, which is a big moment for a lot of people. And so this is his second first kiss. And I wanted kids to like know that was, first kisses are cool, even if you've already had a first kiss. So want to talk about your crushes in your books a little more. Chad?
Sure. So in mine, it's Ezra's kind of at that stage. He's just turned 13. He's in 7th grade, him and Brian both. And he's just kind of wrestling with even, having feelings. I mean, he's had a crush before, but this is the first one where, it was on a friend of his who he knew was just very sort of aggressively heterosexual. So he never mentioned the crush because he knew it would go nowhere. So for him, this is kind of the first one where it's like, maybe he might like me back. And he's kind of figuring out, like, is that good or is that scary? Like, what would change if if I told this other boy that I like him and he likes me back? So he's dealing with both the excitement of a first crush, but also just being in middle grade and wrestling with your sexuality. There's a lot of complicated baggage there still. I think it's better than it was probably when I was in middle grade, but it's still a complicated thing to work through. So Ezra's working through a lot of that. It's both exhilarating and a little bit scary as well for him.
Definitely. Yeah. James, how about yours?
So my crush is in my upcoming book. My crush is kind of the opposite, where he doesn't actually even notice he's developing a crush, and he doesn't. And when he kind of starts to pick up on it, he denies it and tries to fight against it. He does not want a crush at all. He doesn't even want to be where he is. He doesn't want to go. So he's a Native American that's kind of doing this like boot camp. And so he has to do all these little jobs to become a better person. And the person that is going through or teaching him all these things isn't the chief. Instead, it's the chief's daughter. And because she's kind of training her to be chief. So it's these two kids kind of learning life together. And he finds her like completely annoying and super weird and trying to find meaning in everything. And she wears a mask over her face, like almost like a superhero. She's like really weird. So he technically doesn't even know what she looks like, and still develops this crush. And he finds him super like arrogant and lazy, and they kind of meet in the middle and find out like they're perfect for each other. They become better around each other.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh, they're going to love that. Niki, how about yours?
Sure. So Manuel and Sebastian are just sort of on the cusp of 13 teenagerhood, and they meet when they're paired up in art class for a project. And Manuel recently witnessed a really traumatic shooting, and he's dealing with a lot of anxiety and panic attacks, and just learning to be vulnerable and open up around Sebastian, who's just really patient and sweet and kind. Just slowly brings them together, and they learn to be vulnerable and lean on each other like mutually. And that's where that goes.
That's nice. Yeah, we all need someone to lean on, right? Nicole, how about your book?
So the main character is named Vivian, and she's neurodivergent, and as I said, she's a foster kid. So it is important to her. She doesn't want to make connections with friends, with family. She's living with extended family, and she definitely doesn't want a crush. So there's a lot of walls around her. And then as she gets into school, they have a film competition, and she wants them to focus on stop motion animation, which was her passion back in New York City. But in her new small town, they're not willing to think so far outside the box. So she and a small group of kids who are sort of like rogue cast-offs from the film club end up forming their own stop motion animation club to challenge the film club to a spot in this film festival. And through doing that, she becomes very good friends with a girl named Lydia, and then two other kids, a boy named Sky and a girl named Clementine. And she doesn't realize that these feelings she's starting to have for Sky and Clementine are crush type until Lydia is like, I have a crush on Sky, and she's like, oh no, but what if I do? And then she's like, no, you clearly like Clementine. And she's like, wait a minute, do I like Clementine? So I tried to capture all of that middle school confusion. And I'll be honest, I was really inspired by my goddaughter, who's just finished middle school. She just finished 8th grade. But when she had her first like serious relationship, I said, how is it different from friendship? Because she was describing it to me and it all sounded the same. And she said, well, you just know it is. And I thought that was such a great concept. So I tried to mentally put myself back there. Like, how do you know it is and not just friendship?
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that felt, you gave me so many like middle school flashbacks just just with those simple sentences. I already answered this, which I don't know. It's like I haven't seen the questions, which, I wrote them, which who knows? But um, what elements of a middle school crush did you really want to incorporate? Like, why did you think it was important to include a crush in your story? For me, I really want kids to see what a healthy relationship looks like. I think modeling good relationships is really important, and consent for even simple things like holding hands is a good way to model without being like, this is how you do it. So that was really important to me. And I think it helps to see good things in our media and helps kids out. Niki, do you want to start us out?
Yeah, being young and LGBTQ is stressful. Like, do they like me? Do they even like, the same gender? Who do they like? Do they like anybody? Not a lot of people are out at 12 or 13, and I know I sure wasn't. And I still had to figure myself out. And so I wanted to include, like Nicole was saying, that sort of, what is the difference between, are these feelings friendship? Is this more than friendship? Does everybody feel this way about their best friend? And I wanted to sort of show that uncertainty and also the certainty that does come from, I do like this person.
Yeah, very cool. And it makes them feel like they're not alone and that it's super normal to have those feelings. Yeah. Nicole, do you want to share?
Yeah, so one of the things that's important to me in general is writing neurodivergent characters, primarily on the autism spectrum and with OCD, because that's my life and background. So Planet Earth is Blue is about an autistic girl, and Vivian in Untitled middle grade for next year is also neurodivergent. It was important for me to show kids who are not neurotypical, who are disabled, that crushes and romance and all of that exists for them too. There were so many messages growing up where you think, I'm too broken, I'm too different, nobody is going to be patient enough, no one is going to like me. So that was really important for me to show that it's not even an issue in the book. It's just part of who she is. And in her friend group, there are several kids who are disabled, neurodivergent, diverse in different ways. And that's not, it doesn't stop any of them from having the same romantic feelings as anyone else.
That's great. I love that. James?
Yeah, so my crushes in the both books are a little bit different. I kind of just wanted to normalize crushes, like they're just like, failing a test or not making a team, getting broken up with. Like, it's gonna happen to all of us. It's completely normal. Doesn't matter what you are, who you are. It's always gonna hit. Some are gonna work out. Most aren't. But I kind of wanted to make it where, not just to normalize it for the kids, but to normalize it in the sense for like parents and librarians of like, expect this now in middle grade, because some of the pushback would be like, oh, they're too young for this. But if you ask any middle school person or even look back, it was the world to us. Like, it meant everything. Those crushes meant everything. And as an adult, when you read it as a kid, you're like, wow, that's taking it way too serious. But if you ask any middle schooler, it means the world to them. It's like everything matters with this person, and how you do your hair that day, and whether they're going to break up with you for the kid that is at the next desk, because so like everything matters. So I kind of want to just normalize it in that way of like, there is no extreme when it comes to middle school crushes, because it starts off extreme.
True. Yeah, I taught 8th grade and 9th grade, and they're, from one end to the other with their experiences. And I think that's important to show that too. Chad, how about you?
Sure. Others have touched on this a little bit, but I wanted to explore that sort of the boundaries of, what's friendship and then what's a crush, and how does that affect things? I mean, one of the things Ezra sort of talks about with his sister in this book is, I really want to be Ryan's friend. If I try to take it to the next level, how does that affect the friendship? So, I think that's a big concern for a lot of kids too. Like, how will this change things if we sort of make it official?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
No, sorry. Go ahead.
oh yeah. And one of the other things I really wanted to explore, just kind of as James said, just normalizing, Ezra is a queer Black boy. There's not a lot of those in middle grade yet. There's more coming, which is great. And I know there's some really great ones coming in 2022. But, he and Brian are both on the basketball team as well. So I really wanted to kind of get away from sort of toxic masculinity that, like an athlete has to be a certain thing, or a Black boy has to be a certain thing. That, you can be a Black basketball player and have a crush on a boy, or you can be dealing with anxiety, or you can be artsy and sensitive too. So, wanted to kind of sort of dismantle those things a little bit in a, not super preachy way, but in the middle of the story, just kind of normalize, I guess, as others have said as well, that this is just part of being a middle grader.
Yeah, balancing all those different relationships of teammate, friend, romantic interest. Yeah, that's a lot for a 13-year-old to handle.
Yeah.
And an adult. So this is super embarrassing and maybe too much information about myself. But when I was a middle schooler, and kind of how I started writing was by basically doing fan fiction of myself, where I was like having very intricate emotional conversations with crushes in my journal. Like all these planned out conversations that were very melodramatic and super embarrassing for me. But I kind of credit me becoming a writer based on this. It was a huge thing for me, this imagined dialogue. Did anything from your real life, and I'm sure it did, impact or shape your characters and your stories? James, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, so I was like a really, I guess it's weird to say weird kid, but in 7th grade, like my crushes, like I had a crush on this girl right away in the first week, and I didn't know how to tell her I liked her. I never really liked anyone, and I was always very, very shy. So I bit her head and got got kicked out of school for a week. But because I was like trying to be like, okay, now she'll forever know me or remember me. Like I'll be way too shy to talk to her. And I didn't bite her head hard. I just like I didn't even know her name. I just saw her in the halls a lot. And so now I was like, okay, I have 2 years. It takes me a long, long time to talk to people. But now I have 2 years of middle grade to find a way to say sorry to biting her head, So like I had those planned, like I had a plan out. So that didn't really work out, but kind of avoided me after that. But I kind of compared everyone to April O'Neil. I had a huge crush, my cartoon crush, April O'Neil from
Turtles.
Yeah, I judged everyone off her.
James, I feel like you should have prepared me for the head biting thing.
But how do you?
I was not expecting that as an answer, but I should have. I should have been like just open to anything. But did she ever do you ever talk to her like still?
Well, I became friends with her, and we became. It was really like funny after a while. I had to go through the like 2 or 3 months of like that guy bites people's heads. Stay away from like. So I didn't plan on that part happening, but. In today's climate, God, that's horrible. Can you believe that? But back then, it was okay.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. No,
I was too shy to talk to girls and way too shy to like ever like them and let them know. So all I know is like, oh, if a boy likes a girl, he'll like punch her arm and run, and if she chases him, like that's as a little kid. So
yeah.
Maybe if I had just like she's sitting down doing a test, I walk by to her head and then try to run. If she chases me, she likes me, but she just told on me. Uh,
As she should.
as she did. We
Oh, boy.
became good friends in high school and laughed about
That's
it.
awesome. I love that. That's good. That's a happily ever after for that story. Yeah. Nicole, how about you? Anything influence you?
Yes, and it's embarrassing. I don't know if it's quite that embarrassing.
I love that we're sharing embarrassing stuff.
So I was not in middle school. This was just a couple of years ago, but I developed a crush on a friend, and I felt like I was back in middle school. And I know other queer people have had this experience. You sort of, not all, not universally, but others have, that you sort of get sort of behind or stunted if you were young when it wasn't so open to, date who you want to date. So I had a lot of boyfriends in middle school and high school that I just didn't necessarily need to have. My longtime high school boyfriend was a gay boy, so we were perfect for each other. He bought me really great gifts, and we had a really fun time doing theater together, but it was not the kind of romance that you read about in, young adult novels and things like that. So a few years ago, I developed a crush on a friend, and she, I thought, liked me, but I couldn't tell. And it was just like being back at school. And I would call a mutual friend of ours and be like, do you think she likes me? Do you think she likes me? Like, how do you think she feels? Can you talk to her? And she's like, you're 32 years old. I'm not going to go talk to her for you. I'm like, no, I just need you to ask her if she likes me. And it went through this whole like several months long period. And it turns out she was doing the same thing and talking to the same mutual friend. And then when we finally came out as a couple, she FaceTimed us both, and she was like, oh, thank God, because I'm so sick of listening to the two of you be like, how does she feel about me? I feel like we're 12 years old. So I took a lot of that and putting it into this book because I got a resurgence of all of those sort of feelings. But it was nice because I felt like I sort of missed a lot of those feelings in middle school and those experiences. So I get to use it now, except in real life I was like 34.
You should have just bit her.
We're married now, so it worked out.
Aw, that's so
that's
cute.
very sweet.
I love that. What a good story. Chad, how about you?
Sure. So I grew up in a very conservative religious environment in the 90s and kind of the height of purity culture. So crushing was really complicated for me, especially for someone who had crushes on girls and on boys, because that was certainly a no-go in the religious context I grew up in. So it was really one of those things that was just very complicated and sort of guilt-ridden and had a lot of baggage that I've had to work through as an adult. But so actually writing this book was kind of therapeutic for me in a little bit in terms of letting, a queer Black boy just kind of experience a crush and be himself. And, he goes through lots of sort of nervousness and trepidation, but there's no guilt involved for him. Like, it's just okay. So yeah, I guess it was maybe more idealized for me in terms of, what kind of experience I wish I could have had at that age. So, I wasn't sort of expecting it. I think probably for all of us, writing books ends up being therapy a little bit, but I wasn't expecting that as much as I was until I got into it and started writing it. I'm like, oh, this is really kind of liberating actually to write this story. So that was kind of my experience with this book.
That's beautiful. I love that. And we need idealized, beautiful, versions of what could be. Yeah. Niki?
Sure. So from what I remember is that at some point, parents decide no more boy-girl sleepovers, not allowed. But when you're a queer kid, you kind of fly under the radar as a result. So I have a lot of memories of just curling up on the same couch, whispered conversations really late at night, just, listening to a crush fall asleep, and a lot of feelings like that. And so I definitely brought some of those sleepover moments and quiet moments shared together into the golden hour.
Beautiful. I love that. So we talked a little bit about this earlier with gatekeepers. A crush or romance for young people can be a sensitive topic for gatekeepers. I know that my debut, they're 14, and originally I had written them as a YA, and they were 15. And while my agent and I were on submission, she was like, we had already talked about, like, do you think maybe this would be better as middle grade? And this was like 2017, and at that point upper middle grade wasn't really a thing. It's just kind of starting to pick up steam, and my editor was actively, like, very quiet and stealthily pursuing romance in middle grade, and which was a great, like, we paired up, and it was kind of perfect because she loves romance for middle graders, and I like writing that. I was expecting to change elements, and like I said, this was a few years ago, so things have changed a little bit. I was expecting her to be like, hey, maybe they shouldn't kiss or whatever, and I was like, okay, we'll see, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But I never got any pushback from my publisher. And it wasn't until, for me, that it went out to reviewers that I started to see some, like, hey, I don't feel comfortable with this. Like, 14-year-old, not all 14-year-olds want to have a first kiss. Like, so it wasn't until, we were at the reader stage for me where I got any kind of pushback. And, I knew there would be some, and I'm okay with it. It's fine for me. But I think that there should be all different kinds of options for kids, no romance, in between. So, have you gotten any pushback? And what do you think about that? Let's start. Niki, can I start with you?
Sure. Yeah. So mine is a little interesting because it's a graphic novel. It's not like explicitly written out on the page. And so I actually had the opposite problem, in that both my editors and early readers were like, oh, this moment would have been so cute if they had kissed. And I was like, but I drew them kissing. I guess I just drew it too small and too vague. So I actually had the encouragement to go back and make it even clearer, and I redrew a couple pages to really give that first kiss the time, the space it deserved. But I didn't really get any pushback. I have a feeling, if anything, it'll be pushback on other topics in the book, and so a kiss is not at all going to be what people are focused on.
Okay. Chad, how about you?
Sure. Yeah, I haven't had any pushback on that element. Actually, like Niki, there's some heavy topics in my book. So the crush part is kind of the sweeter, sort of lighter part of the book in a lot of ways. Brian's dealing with some pretty heavy stuff with his family. So I haven't. I mean, my editor has been super supportive. I'm in Eastern Canada, and so I think sometimes geography might impact too. I know there are certain places where, particularly queer kids in relationships are not really sort of well endorsed, but I haven't experienced that so much, which has been a bit of a pleasant surprise, to be honest. I kind of braced myself for a little bit of pushback, but I haven't really seen it. I guess the one place I would say I have seen it, I mentioned coming from a conservative religious background, and so, I have people in my life who are just really silent, like they don't necessarily, haven't even bothered to say sort of, hey, congrats on the book or things like that. So I've experienced a little bit of that, but I mean, the positives and the good feedback I've gotten has certainly outweighed that for sure.
Yeah, I think so. Mine, she's at Catholic school, and it's very, like, there's a lot about Joan of Arc. So I'm wondering if it's because of that, people go in with different, expectations there. But I haven't gotten too much. I don't want to make it seem like, people have pitchforks. James, how about you?
Yeah, I got, mine has the kiss, crush, kind of, not really obsessive behavior, but like really, really, really excited. My first book, The Brave, really excited about a crush, thinking about her all the time. So my editor told me to expect a lot of pushback there, because we're kind of in uncharted territory, because it's basically like a full-on romance in The Brave. And I didn't get any feedback I didn't get any pushback until readers, and so it's like, it's weird because it's like the kids loved it. Like I got like little book clubs started with kids, like romance book clubs, and like I get all these letters from kids that be like, this is how I feel, like, oh my gosh, you know, like I have to steal my mom's books to usually read about how I feel. And so now there's like a kid book. So I felt really good about that. Librarians and teachers, I feel like the same, like awesome feedback. But one pushback is from, like, it's funny that you could exact it. It's the pushback are from religious parents. You know, like, I don't want my kid reading about a kiss at her age. And I'm like, well, then you don't know your daughter, you know, or you don't know your son, you know, because like they definitely do not think the same as their parents. And the parents are trying to, like, you know, pick what the kid reads. But I think if we just learn to ignore that and just keep writing for the kids, we're in a good territory.
Yeah, I'm with you. Right for the kids.
Yeah.
Nicole.
I've been lucky that my editor is not only very supportive and excited, but when I had first pitched the idea of the book to her, that part, the crush part, was just a minor couple of lines in the synopsis, and she highlighted it, and she's like, I love this, it's really lean in, there aren't too many bi middle grade characters yet, so she was super excited. I do wonder, though, I am from a more conservative area, sort of like a red circle within a blue state, and I recently went back and worked at my alma mater, my local high school, and one of the English teachers was telling me how difficult it is for them to have books with any sort of queer content. They recently taught a book that had a black main character who were accused of indoctrination, and she's like, literally the character is just black, and that's the problem that they had. And then this past year, they elected onto the school board a woman who was a big proponent of conversion therapy. And I had some friendships end because I have friends who voted for her. And I was like, how can you vote for that? And they said, well, I think they should have the right to choose. And I was like, well, I have the right to choose not to be your friend. So that was a huge wake-up call in the last couple of years. There's been this major pushback. So I'm curious how some of them would react to the book once it's out. Not that I care.
I think probably like Chad said, like they're like you, like they can't see you type thing. Which I guess that's preferable, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about authors who we think do a really good job with this. Like we're all kind of saying, this is all new, kind of new territory. I know that when I'm an old person, and so when I was a middle schooler, my options were like Sweet Valley High, which the romance in it is, you know, like it's not very like emotionally deep. And then, but I was reading like Stephen King and Mary Higgins Clark, like things that were way out of my, and like Danielle Steele. So like not at all in this realm, you know, where I should be. So let's talk about people we think do a good job. When I was in college, I took this speech class where we had to, for English teachers, where we had to read pieces of people's work to our classmates, which was kind of cool and a good segue into my career now. But I read Louise Renison for the first time with the Angus thongs and full frontal snogging. I don't know if any of you know that, but it's like, she's like, the main character is like Cher from Clueless, kind of, but middle class, and she's like sassy and like obsessed with making out and like perfect upper middle grade stuff now, but back it was like 10 to 15 years ago. There wasn't that age category, so it was kind of in its own territory. So she kind of introduced me to the idea of, you know, this. So let's start. James, you want to start? Who do you think's doing it really well?
Well, from books I read, Sharon Creech of Walk Two Moons, I like that crush a lot because it's never really, I think it's like an introduction to a crush. I really like that. I like the subtleties. I actually love that over, you know, I like you, where it's like, I wonder the way that she moved her hair. I wonder, you know. I wonder if that means she likes me. I think that's how I thought, and that's how kids think. So I really like that book. But movies a lot too. Like My Girl, I think is one of the best middle grade love stories. Sad
Yeah.
at the end, but yeah. So, and I didn't read a lot as a kid. It took me 2 years to read my first book, and there was no humans involved in that book. It was Chester Cricket's New Home about a bunch of bugs, middle grade. But so right now I'm getting to experience. I had a learning disability, and I couldn't read a book to save my life. So now I'm actually able to go back and read the classics and see what I missed, because as a kid I wasn't able to read, and so I'm experiencing all what you guys grew up with right now, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think TVs and movies are doing like a good job of showing us that kind of age group, like Stranger Things, super authentic as far as the young people's relationships and that. Nikki, how about you?
Yeah, I just finished reading Molly Ostertag's latest graphic novel, Girl from the Sea, which is a really cute crush and early relationship. It's really, really adorable. I think it's upper middle grade. And in prose, I really love Ashley Herring Blake's novels. So Ivy Everdean's Letter to the World and The Mighty Heart of Sunny St. James are both really great. I can't wait to read her new one.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
those are great. Chad.
Really like Eric Bell's Alan Cole books. The second one, Alan Cole Doesn't Dance, has one of the most just authentically awkward first relationships. Like it's just so perfectly captures how awkward it feels to be, those just the cringeworthy moments as you're trying to get to know someone, and it just goes disastrously all the time. And one that's just come out recently, Almost Flying by Jake Maya Arlo, is just a really sweet romance. Lots of roller coasters, first crush on a theme park tour. It's really great. And Now or Never by Jazz Taylor as well is another really, really sweet sort of first crush book. So yeah, those would be three recent ones that I'd recommend.
Wonderful. Awesome. Thank you. Nicole.
Hurricane Season by Nicole Melody is so great because the main character has a crush on someone who's much older, well, not much older, but a teenager, and that's much older when you're 11 or 12. And it sort of explores that, which is really natural. And then the spoiler alert, teenager has to kind of let her down gently. But I think it's such a sweet way of showing that a lot of kids do get crushes on, movie stars or adults that they know, or teenagers, people who would not be appropriate for them at all, and it normalizes that. But at the same time, it wasn't in a way that was toxic. It very much was like, you're a sweet kid, but you're a kid. And then she moves on. I liked that. Barbara D. Star-Crossed is really sweet. And that's the first by middle grade that I know of. I don't know if there was one prior to that. That was the first one that I read. And it's about kids doing a production of Romeo and Juliet, and a little girl who, like 11, 12-ish, who has a crush on the girl playing Juliet, and she is playing Romeo, and there's going to be a kiss. And there's all these nerves about this kiss because it's just a stage kiss, but is it just a stage kiss? And then coming out is In the Key of Us by Mariama Lockington. And I have not read the whole thing yet, but my goddaughter was asked to be like a sensitivity, authenticity reader when she was looking for queer kid readers, and it takes place at a summer camp. And Meadow really loved it, and I got to read some parts of it or hear some parts of it while she was reading and taking notes to give her feedback. So I'm very excited for that one to come out so I can actually read the whole thing.
Oh, I love that. I love that they had a kids and like authenticity read. That's awesome. I haven't heard of that. That's so cool.
Took Meadow to a book signing that Mariama did, and Meadow is adopted and Mariama is also adopted. And after the book signing, they were talking a lot about what it's like to be an adopted kid, and so they made that connection. And she had to do it. It was really cool.
Yeah, that's super cool. All right, our last question. What would you like to see more of? Chad, you want to start?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think just normalizing the full range of crushes and experiences. You know, I think we're seeing more queer content in middle grade, but I think there's certainly room for more of that still. You know, kids exploring their sexual identity, their gender identity, just yeah, full range, I guess, of not just, you know, boy meets girl, but expanding beyond that in middle grade. And I think we're getting there, but I think there's still lots of room for more. And then just to diverse representation of, you know, not just white kids getting relationships as well. So you know, that's something I certainly look for in books as well.
Yeah, with you, Nicole.
So as I said before, showing characters who are disabled, neurodivergent, etc., being able to have those same crushes and first romances and first love. And I'd love to see that continue up through YA and adult books. There's so few right now. So the more the merrier.
Yeah. James?
I think I'd like to see more of a reflection of how the world really is, like how, you know, adult books get it and YA books pretty much get it. And for middle grade, it was always, no, kids' brains are too sensitive and too like fragile. And I like how now it's slowly bleeding into what kids see outside every day is what kids should see on the page. Like in my book, I made sure I thought I was going to get so much taken out, but I have interracial couples, I have gay couples, I have disabilities, I have alcoholism, Native American, single parent. So I put all those in there because like I put in things I saw every single day, and I was interested to see, okay, which ones would you peel back? Which ones are a no-go for middle grade? You know, like I'm going to throw everything at you and you're going to just pick apart a couple, which will let me still win. But everything got in, you know, everything got in there. And I was very, very surprised about that. But I think that's the direction that middle grade is going. As long as we keep listening to the kids, let the kids steer it and not these gatekeepers. You know, these gatekeepers are intended to be good. They're there for a good reason, but not everything they do is productive. You know, like they stifle and limit you in a lot of ways that I have experienced. So I think as long as we keep listening to the kids will want to see what they see every day outside at school.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, we want it to reflect their real lives, which, you know, they see a lot at their age in middle school. Niki?
I'm just going to echo Chad, really. I would love to see every sort of LGBTQIA plus, every type of relationship and crush, and also more asexual, like crushes that, you know, without more type of thing. There's such diversity in kids growing up, and I would love to see that reflected more.
With you. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. This was a great panel. So glad to be here. And yeah, keep crushing it. That was so corny. I need to stop.